tell. Is there somebody else here? Okay, kind of getting a late start to this stream today. Sorry, it was quiet for a minute. Trying to get things set up and got a new set up for my device to record with to see if this works any better. We'll see. So far it's doing okay. I'm trying to keep an eye on the video as well to see if you guys can see what I'm doing at all. I need to try to figure out the light situation a little bit here. I don't know if this will help or not. Oh, that helps a little bit. Okay. Well, I hope everybody's doing okay. It's Saturday afternoon here. Glad you guys are here. If anyone wants to pop in the chat, feel free. My name is Jennifer. And I'm on most social media platforms as the Curly Stitcher. And primarily I come on here, well, I've only been on here twice now, but so far I've been knitting. If you happen to be with me the other day, you might recognize this yarn. This is, and sorry guys, I've cut up the tag now because I finished my initial project, so I'm going to be putting this in a journal, so I cut the ball band. But this is called, this is by a company called Dancing Leaf Farm. It's Bebop is their DK weight yarn, and the colorway is Heather. And last time I was on, I had just finished the banding and was starting the crown, the actual shaping of the hat last time, so I got my hat done. Now the pattern I'm knitting is by Nomadic Knits. It's called the Lonely Hearts Club hat, and this is their 2022 release. And there is meant to be a duplicate stitched heart motif on this hat, and I have not decided on a color yet. So if you have any ideas or suggestions, feel free to pop on here and tell me what you think. My favorite color is green, so I don't know whether to do something real contrasty like a neon green or even maybe a neon pink or purple. But I got to figure out, because it's just going to overlay. Duplicate stitching is where you just kind of stitch over your knitted fabric. So I've got to figure out what color I want to do. If I want to do something bright that pops, maybe like a turquoise or a teal even, or if I want to do something that goes closer to these colors like a pink or a purple or even maybe a silvery gray, which is kind of, this little section here. So yeah, I haven't quite decided yet. So if you have any ideas, let me know. But in the meantime, if you were with me the last time, I had mentioned how I had enough of this yarn left over that I was going to figure out what to do with the remainder of the yarn. So one of the ongoing projects that I have been working on is the Northeasterly Blanket. And since I told you guys about it last time, I thought I would show it to you really quick. This is just the first strip of this blanket, and I think so far I've got about 48 inches before I knit this latest section, and each section's about 2.5 3 inches, so yeah, I might be at 50 inches now. But essentially each finished project that I have, if I have scrap yarn left over, I put a chevron into my blanket. And of course this is not a blanket yet. This is just the first strip. But basically, if you can imagine, now that I've got a long enough piece, I might be able to kind of help you visualize it. But you will knit multiple strips and then line them up. And the chevrons, well, you'll probably go the same directions with the chevrons, but I think I prefer going in opposite directions. But essentially, that's what I'm hoping to achieve. But every chevron then is a kind of a memory, a reminder of a project that I'd worked on. Um, and I pretty much know where all of these came from. Most of these are either hats or shawls and hats or something to that end. But that's the latest bit right there is this yarn. So this pattern calls for a either a DK weight, which is what this yarn is that I'm working with today, or holding two fingering yarns together. So in the case where I had knit something that had multiple fingering weight yarns, that's what I chose to do, was basically knit holding two of them together. In the case of like this was a multicolored shawl. I think this one here may have been a couple of the other colors from the same shawl, or maybe even that one there. So I tried to hold them together. This one happened to be a pair of socks, and this is actually, the yarn was multicolored, so I just held two of those yarns together. So in this case, this was an actual DK weight yarn, so that's what I did, was I went ahead and knit my one chevron for that particular section, and then when I get on to my next project that I have some leftover yarn, that's what I'll do next. And I do have a bag over here where I keep kind of all my scraps that I've knit socks or whatever with, and just keep them all in a bag. So I do have some yarn that I can definitely add to it, but I just haven't done that yet because I work on projects like this. So the other day, the other thing I had mentioned was, because I liked the band, the head, the folded brim portion of this hat so much, if I had whatever yarn I had left over, because I'm trying not to have a lot of scraps left over, I really, really liked this idea just as a headband by itself. So that is what I'm knitting today. Basically, I am taking what remainder yarn I've got, and I'm knitting a headband with whatever's left until I get to enough yarn at the end that I'm ready to bind off and I won't have any yarn left over. So I'm just going to sit here and knit. If anybody pops in the room, feel free to say hi if you so choose. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of sit here to myself and knit away. Really haven't been much in the mood for cross stitching. But I would like to get back to that. I do have projects I want to work on, but for right now, knitting's just kind of been where it's been at. And finishing my hat project, or finishing my hat with the yarn, and getting to the point where I'm just about to the end of this skein of yarn. I kind of feel like I'm accomplishing something, I guess would be the best way to describe it. So it's kind of been one of those things where it feels good to complete projects just for the sake of feeling like you've accomplished something, and want to try to get a few more things done on the weekends just to feel productive. I'm trying to make plans for tomorrow too. I think I had a fabric order come in that I need to go and get down at the mailbox later on today, and I've got plans to make a couple of project bags. One, if anybody watches Debbie Shore on YouTube, which I absolutely love her tutorials, she did a really cute, what's meant to be a drawstring backpack for, like a small child. It's not very big, but I've wanted to learn how to make, or how to sew drawstring style bags, particularly for things like this, small projects that I can just throw some yarn and my needles and my little notions bag in. And her tutorial was really cute, and I kind of thought, because it's a drawstring backpack, so it's meant to be to where the straps that the child uses to put over their shoulders are meant to be the drawstrings to keep the bag closed. I don't necessarily want two drawstrings on either side, but I thought if I could make it to where it was just one, but so it's something you could just sling over your shoulder, I thought that would be a really great idea. So I think I'm going to try that tomorrow. And then the other project bag I want to make is for a friend who I'm going to try my best to get her to do a stitch along with me, a cross stitch stitch along. And I bought the Rosina Dizery pattern from Works by ABC, and I bought myself a digital copy, and I bought her a paper copy because she's cross-stitched a little bit when she was younger, but she's not a regular cross-stitcher as an adult. So I wanted to make it as easy on her as possible. So I bought her the pattern, the chart, I bought all the DMC, and I bought the linen fabric, and I figured, well, what I'll do is I will buy the same fabric for both of us. So ordered that from Fire Poppies. That came the other day. And then realized that, because I always order some linen ornament packs, and in that they sent a little ornament cut of, I guess, like a newer linen fabric from, I think, XG Design. And the color to me was absolutely perfect for that Rosina Dizery chart. So I went back on Fire Poppies and I ordered 2 more cuts of fabric, of that fabric that they sent me, that little ornament cut. And I mean, it is just gorgeous. And I think I am one of those people, like the Rosina Dizery pattern gives you a called for, and I think it was an R&R Reproductions fabric. However, because fabric's so hard to come by, I wasn't going to go out of my way to buy that. I think it was like French vanilla or something like that. And I wasn't going to go out of my way to try to wait and try to find the exact fabric that the model was stitched on. But I do like trying to the best that I can, color match to the picture, which I know sometimes is not the best thing in the world to do, because the pictures sometimes are not taken true to life. Like, they don't go back and adjust the white balance or the contrast or the the red, green, blue settings or whatever to try to get it to actually look like the original, that was stitched. So, but the linen that I went back and ordered the second time very much looks true to the color of the fabric in the picture. And when I did a floss toss with all the DMC, I think it's going to look really good on that fabric. So I'm really kind of excited about that. So I had to go through my fabric stash today to try to find some fabric that I think my friend will like. But I'm going to make her a, the typical, well, not, I say typical, it's kind of atypical really, but the typical project bags that people, cross stitchers, either buy or make for themselves that have the vinyl on the front so you can see the project inside. So I think she'll appreciate that with a zipper. And I'm not going to do anything specific to the chart or to, the theme or anything like that. I just found some really pretty red fabric that's got like poppy type flowers, white flowers on it, that she likes red a lot, and I think she'd really appreciate the fabric. I think it would suit her taste, but it would be something that if she decided to really get into cross stitching, fingers crossed if I can convince her, but it'll be something that she can use for any project. Like, it would be her bag, it wouldn't necessarily have to be the bag for this pattern, because I definitely have done that, made vinyl front bags with specific pattern, themed pattern, or fabric in mind for the pattern that I'm stitching on, or try to at least match up, maybe not necessarily specifically themed, but maybe if I'm doing a gothic piece, like I made a vinyl project bag that's got like, dark, like, moons and stars and, that kind of thing. So if I'm working on a Halloween piece or something, or a zodiac, I've got a couple of astrology pieces that I want to do, or moon charts or something like that, then I would put it in that bag. But I'm constantly making project bags because as many projects as I want to start, I haven't quite finished the ones that are in the bags that I already have, so I find myself making them over and over again. And I will have to kind of figure out what I want to do as far as my own project. My copy of Rosina Desiree, I don't know if I want to do just a more traditional, or floral fabric, or if I want to do something more, I don't know, something to kind of mark the occasion, mark the pattern, the chart. If you're not familiar with the chart, and I don't want to get into too many specifics because I'm afraid I will kind of get the details wrong, but Rosina Desiree is basically a chart that was stitched by a young girl back in the 1800s who attended the African Free School in New York. And it was discovered by someone here very recently at a New York museum, and Arlene Cohen of Works by ABC was given permission to chart and sell the pattern for us, for people today to stitch. And it's unique in that it's one of the very few patterns that we know of that exist that was stitched by someone of color, and particularly, of that time period in the 1800s. So, for most people of color, when they see typical samplers, especially reproduction samplers, there have been a couple who have commented, and it makes someone like me think about the fact that when they see that sampler, what they see typically is a traditional sampler that was probably stitched by someone who was not of the same race that they are, and stitched in a time period in which a person of their color was probably the help or indentured or even enslaved by the person who stitched it. So to some people, black people, brown people, those samplers are just a reminder of their past, their ancestors' past. So in that, to have discovered a pattern like Rosina Disary means so much to them, because it reflects a time in which they would expect not to find a sampler stitched by a person of color, and yet there are a few, but very few, and fewer still that have been charted so that we may stitch them today. So that's the basic idea behind the meaningfulness of that particular chart. So I was really excited about the chart, and I knew that Arlene Works by ABC, she was going to somehow make sure that a portion of her proceeds went back to, I don't know if it was back to the museum directly, but back to a charitable foundation or organization that she felt like was deserving of the proceeds. And in that, she also, offered, different ways of, different copies, different means of distributing the pattern. So when I purchased it originally, I purchased both a paper and a PDF because I felt like the money, the money was going to a good place. She deserved, some recognition, but I also wanted to have both copies because there is a lot of historical information provided on the paper pattern and also on the PDF. But to have the paper pattern, also there are some, I think a few specialty stitches, not many, but a few. And so in buying the PDF, I wanted to see if it's Pattern Keeper compatible, which it is, which I am excited about. That'll help me keep track. But in the event that I needed to look at the paper pattern and see, more clearly how things were stitched, I'd have it. Well, come to find out, it's a little more, I don't want to say complicated, but it's a little more involved than that, because Arlene actually stitched it and created the pattern to where it's, some of the stitches are over 1. And so on a linen, if you're doing, since the majority of the pattern, not the majority, but quite a bit of the pattern's over 2, those over 1 stitches on Pattern Keeper do not, they don't translate real well. So I was glad to have the paper pattern to at least see that for myself. And of course, having the PDF outside of Pattern Keeper helps tremendously as well. But then the more I got thinking about it, the more I realized I wanted to share that paper pattern with somebody. And my best friend, she and I are always talking about doing crafty stuff together. I've given her knitting kits and other things like that, but she's busy. She's a nurse. So her days are exhausting. So when she gets days off, I think she uses a lot of that time to sleep and recover and do chores and stuff like that. But she and I went out a few weekends ago, and I brought up the subject of the pattern with her, and asked her, did she think she would ever be interested in doing cross stitch, and specifically cross-stitching that pattern. Would that pattern interest her? And she said yes. So I was very excited about that. So that will be, like I said, my plans for tomorrow. I have everything together. The only other thing I don't know is, because she's not a regular stitcher, is if she would prefer a hoop or to stitch in hand. Or I don't know, a Q-snap seems kind of complicated, and because it's linen, I've kind of learned, and maybe somebody out there can tell me, an actual branded Q-snap, I have put linen in them and had them snag horribly. So I'm now tempted only to use my actual Q-snap brand Q-snap for Ada fabric, and then my less expensive like loops and threads or whatever plastic snap frames for my linen, because they don't have the little like ridges and the really tight the clips on the ends. I mean, I was scared. I had put one on a Q-snap frame, and I was really really worried that when I was trying to take it off, that I was going to tear the linen, and I was really going to be frustrated because sometimes you buy well, not just enough, but you buy enough linen to do a project, but you don't expect that in the middle of your project you're going to have this huge snag. So it worried me a little bit. But anyway, in buying this linen for her, I think I'm going to send with along with it either a 10 or 12 inch just plain hoop. I wish I could find one of those nice, I say nice, one of the ones that I think Michael's is the one that sells them. It might be a Loops and Threads brand, but it's the outside is actually, it looks like faux wood, but it's actually almost like rubber, and it's just real stretchy and then just goes over a white inner hoop. Those seem so easy to get on and get off, but I'm just not sure if in gifting her this kitted up project, if that would be easier for her, or if she's comfortable enough with a standard hoop. Because I think when I was at Michael's the other day, the largest one that they had in the store was, I want to say 10 inches, and I was worried that if she wanted to actually frame it, which I hope she would want to take it and get it framed, or buy a square rectangular frame for it. I kind of feel like she would do better, or she would be more proud of her finished project with it. But I don't know. I don't know if that's what she wants or not. So for now, I'm just trying to think as far as putting her project in something where she can stitch it easily, but then also making a project bag big enough for her, for a hoop, that she can put it in, so that it stays safe from heat and light and the elements and whatever. She didn't have any pets or kids or anything like that, so that wouldn't be a problem. I would just be, like I keep all my projects in my project bags primarily to keep, cat hair off of them and whatever, but I'm also clumsy, and I try to keep them also in project bags to keep, me from spilling something on them, or knocking them over, knocking them somewhere where maybe you haven't vacuumed in a while and there's a bunch of dust or something like that. So those are the main things I'm just trying to nail down as far as what I want to do with the rest of my weekend. And then I know if you do follow some of the other cross stitchers here on Twitch, Michelle Bendy I think is doing a late Twitch stream tomorrow, so I'm trying to make plans for that. And I don't know if Kaylee Cross Stitch, she usually does hers on YouTube, so maybe she'll have a live tomorrow. I don't think I've seen Kaylee. I know she did a live this week one day, and I think I'm just too old to understand how YouTube works sometimes, but I have it set up to where it's supposed to tell me. Yet she may have done it during a time when I was, at work, in the middle of work, that kind of thing, and just didn't see it. I don't know. I need to figure out how to set up my notifications better, I suppose. So, I hope everybody else is having a good weekend. I'm having an okay one. Got all my grocery shopping done this morning. And I say grocery shopping, I did all the shopping I needed to do, so I don't have to leave the house for the rest of the weekend, so that's a good thing. So I just decided I'm gonna use up the rest of my yarn, get maybe another project finished under my belt this weekend. And my plan is to just knit basically until I have about that wide of a band, or until I run out of yarn, whichever's first. And I think my cast on, so I did a long tail cast on, and I think I needed 50 or I used about 51 inches, and that's the rest of my tail. So I figure as long as I have about that much to cast off, I should be good. And I gotta figure out, that's the other thing I need to do too. I'm not gonna be on here all day, but I'll be on here for a while. I gotta find, I know there's somebody's incredibly stretchy bind off. So that's what I gotta find and figure out, what, how to do that bind off. And I know I've used it before for a pair of socks, toe up socks that I did, or that I actually technically still working on. I've still got the second sock to finish. Maybe that's what I ought to do, is get on here one day with those things, because I always don't want to work on those. And it seems like that hat got done because I devoted some time this week to knitting on it here on Twitch. And as I mentioned in that stream forced me to focus my, that dedicated time to that hat, and that did a world of good for me. So I think that maybe what I do one of these times is to get those socks out and try to finish them. I'm kind of torn about those socks too, if you guys want to hear my sock drama. I have yet to find, well, that's not true. The first pair of socks I ever knit exactly to gauge, turned out exactly like I wanted, but they were a gift, so I gave them away. Second pair of socks I ever knitted, I went out, found a free pattern for a pair of socks, found some yarn that I absolutely loved. They were also meant to be a gift. I think as far as I know, they knit up to the specs, and, of course gave them away as a gift. Since then, I've had a pair of socks that I've only got one sock because I screwed up the pattern. Or not screwed it up, but I misread the pattern, and so the socks turned out different than I expected. But I also think I used either needles too small, one size too small or something, because they turned out tiny. So I'm going to knit the other sock, hopefully in the same method, and get the same result with the second sock, but they will have to be gifted to somebody because they are not going to be for me or for the person that I intended to knit them for. So that one got put on hold. In the meantime, I knit a pair of socks that was part of an old knit crate. Those turned out good. They actually turned out a little bit big, but that's okay. So they're more like, I don't want to say like slipper socks, but I wouldn't wear them, like I'd wear them to bed or, wear them around the house with house shoes, but I wouldn't wear them necessarily with like jeans or anything because they're a little bit slouchy. I mean, they would, walking around in them, I think they would start to slide down, like the heels slide down, in the back of my shoe or whatever. But those turned out fine. Then the next pair of socks I knit, and I did finish those. The next pair of socks I knit, I started, and I can't remember what the deal. Oh, I did a pair of Magic Heel socks, and I bought that pattern very close to right after the pattern was released, and the heel portion, if you're familiar with that pattern, I don't want to give it away because it's a paid pattern and that's what you're really paying for, is the magic heel part. But either I misread or misinterpreted or something, but I think since then, it's a pattern by the Autumn Acorn. I think she's gone back and rewritten or, revised that portion of the pattern a little bit, because when I got done with my first sock, I realized that the heel didn't quite look like the heel in all the pictures on Ravelry, which is okay, because it still fit. It still worked. It still fit me well. It was fine. But I got a little flustered because, again, I've made a sock that wasn't exactly right. So I couldn't decide if, do I make the second sock wrong, incorrectly to match the first, or because it's just the heel and nobody's really going to see it anyway, do the second sock correctly. And then, they're still going to match as far as, the yarn colors and all the other things about a sock that somebody would notice, that I wouldn't necessarily be worried that the heels weren't the same. So I kind of put that sock adventure aside. I only had one of those done, but I did finally go back and finish the second sock. Just decided to haul off and do the second sock the way the pattern was meant for it to be. Not worrying that the heels, were slightly different, because again, it shouldn't matter, that all somebody really sees anyways, the color or the stripe or whatever. Only to find out that it had been so long that my knitting tension, I guess, had changed. So the second sock looked just like the first sock, but for some reason when I put it on, the second sock was just a little bit tighter, which is okay. They fit. Again, they would actually be good socks to wear like underneath jeans or, with an outfit out. They fit well. So other than somebody, if they were really paying attention, noticing that the heels were different, they're great. So I got those done. So then, I also found, or not found, but Yarnspirations was going to do a Patton's sock along, I want to say December or winter, like December 2020 into, the winter of 2021 maybe. And it was supposed to be like a deal where, because it was a sock along, I think it was released in 3 sections. And each section, so like the first section was and I'm trying to remember now if it was a cuff down or a toe up. I think it was a cuff down. But so like the first section was like the cuff and the leg. And then the second section was the heel. And, getting that done. And then the last section was, the foot and the toe, or however it worked. But it was supposed to be done in like either 3 weeks or 6 weeks or something like that. And that didn't happen. But I did finally get around to doing them. And all I ended up doing was, again, taking actual Patton's Croy that I liked, sock yarn, and just following the pattern. And the only kind of crazy drama with those pair of socks, well, a couple of things. One was the yarn I wanted to use. For some reason, every time I buy sock yarn, like at a store, I either buy, if it's the, independent hand-dyed yarn, I know typically they try to sell sock yarn in skeins that are meant to make a pair of socks. But like those was Patton's Croy, so, they were bought at like Michael's or Joann's, box store. And I just picked up 2 balls because I liked that color. It was kind of a charcoal gray with some, white or lighter gray and black and darker gray, kind of a heathered mixed marled color. And those socks, because of my foot size, the pattern said it actually required 3 balls. Well, by the time I was ready to knit those socks, I realized the dye lot I had didn't exist anymore. And so the dye lots that were out now did not look like the one that I bought. So I ended up buying just 1 ball of like a charcoal gray color to do the heels, toes, and cuffs. And they look great. They turned out fantastic. But the other kind of small deal was the sizing chart, or the, my gauge or whatever for those socks. Those socks, again, are kind of on the big side, and they're more like slipper socks. So I've got to learn a little bit more about sock knitting as far as negative ease. And I think a lot of people who knit a lot of socks would say once they get down a formula, like basically the certain number of stitches to cast on and the certain size needles to use that they know make the perfect sock for them, then they just stick to it and they just know what their formula is. Now, knitting socks for other people is kind of different because not everybody's foot's the same. But if you're knitting socks for yourself, that's fine. You know exactly what you're doing. So that was the next pair of socks I finished. And now, currently, I'm working on a set that I bought I think it's called Socktacular. It's a digital book from Knit Picks, but basically what it is kind of a recipe book for knitting socks. So they have a bunch of toes and a bunch of patterns for basically for the leg and foot of socks, and then a bunch of heels and a bunch of cuffs too, different cuffs depending on whether you're going cuff first or cuff at the end. But those are all like you can mix and match if you like this toe and you want it with this heel, or if you want, this pattern with this toe, or however you want to do it. So that's what I started doing. And again, following their formula, went right along and then got the first one done. And the foot portion between the heel and the toe is about 1.5 to 2 inches too long for me. And I've got big feet. I wear size 11, 10.5 and 11 in women's shoes. So apparently I calculated something wrong there, and I don't know what it is. I mean, I'm sure it's just an inch thing, like where they tell you, when you are done with your heel, how many inches to do before you start your toe, and I either miscalculated that or their pattern is way off. I don't know which. I'll have to go back and look. But so I again finished the first sock, put it on, and basically my toes inside the sock are where the toes start on the actual first sock I knit. So what I did though was, out of curiosity, when my husband came home, I asked him, I said, "Hey, will you try this on?" And he looked at me like he thought I was crazy because it looks huge. It looks huge to us. I mean, we have large feet, but for it to look big to us means it looks really big. It looks really long. And I said, well, here's the deal. I'm kind of curious because I kind of understand the mechanics of the way knitting operates, in that, for instance, with this hat, when you do ribbing, like this is 1x1 ribbing that I'm knitting, there's a lot of stretch this way and there's a little bit of stretch this way, So, and then when it's stockinette, same thing, you have stretch certain directions but not other directions. And what I wanted to know from him was, because of the way I knit that sock, or because of the length that I knit that sock on the foot, if whatever stretch it did not have to meet the width, because he has very wide feet, the width of his foot, would the length of the knit make up the difference? Basically, in other words, because it doesn't have much give, stretch this way, would all of that extra length allow this to stretch even more? And the answer is yes, actually it does quite a bit. So not to say that those socks would be for him, but it did give me some insight into the mechanics of knitting, as far as the way in which, if I were to accidentally or incorrectly knit a pair of socks, and I decided to gift them or give them to someone, would they still benefit someone of a certain size? And yes, they would, to a certain degree. So now I'm at this crossroads, because these socks that I'm talking about, I was going to knit them for myself. Now that I know that they're 2 inches or inch and a half, 2 inches too long, basically I have the decision of whether to. And my initial plan was I was just going to go back, unpick and unravel the toe, and then unravel the foot back as far as I needed to, whatever it was, another inch and a half or whatever, and then re-knit the toe. The only catch though is these are toe up socks, so this would be knit in the opposite direction, but I don't think it would be that noticeable. I've just never done it before, so it would be a challenge, a new challenge for me. But then I started thinking, well, maybe I should just go ahead and try to duplicate knit the second sock just like I did the first, and just end up with a pair of extra long, very, very extra long socks. And either I've got a couple of people in my family that have large feet, my husband being one of them. I don't think it's not that he wouldn't wear them, but he and I have had the discussion a couple of times about if I knit socks for him, because there are a couple of things I would like to knit him, but I think he feels like because what he wears typically are just the plain white athletic socks like you buy in a bag of a dozen or whatever at the clothing store, that for me to knit socks for him, he wouldn't wear them that often because like during the summer it's too warm here, none of us want to wear socks, and then in the winter he would only wear them here at home, like kind of like house socks, with his house shoes or whatever, but he wouldn't necessarily, they wouldn't be something that would be worn all the time. So, but I do have other members of the family that also have large feet. So I'm not there yet, but I think I've got on those socks another, I want to say maybe an inch of the foot, before I have to make a decision as to whether or not I want to keep it shorter and attempt to redo the toe on the second one or the first one, or do I knit an extra inch or whatever it was and go ahead and make them kind of an extra long pair. So like I said, I should probably bring them on here and work on them here, just because it seems like I can concentrate on one thing and get something done. And the pattern from the book isn't very difficult. It'll just be once I get to that heel, it requires a bit more concentration, unlike me knitting the crown of this hat yesterday and then me doing this today. I mean, this is just a 1x1 rib all the way around, and I'm just knitting it as much as I can for as long as I can until I'm just about ready to give up. And I'm already at an hour again. I can't believe it. Yeah, I know I kind of goofed off at the beginning of this, though. I've got to figure out, I may edit it down a bit, because I got a new, little tripod thing for my camera, and then I realized it didn't do what I wanted it to do once I got it out of the package. So then I had to kind of look at options as to how I could still use it after spending the money on it. And then it was in like one of those blister packaging, so the minute I cut it open, that was it. So I think this is working okay. This is better than last time. Last time I had the camera on a tripod that was basically, from the floor up, but it was kind of in between me and my knitting. At least this time I can actually pay attention to what I'm doing. And I'm at the point too, or I set it up now too, where I can actually see my my video over here kind of off camera, so I can see what I'm doing, which is good. I do appreciate that. Finally got my Twitch account kind of set up the way I want it. I just have a lot to learn, this only being my second attempt at this. So we shall see how it goes. I am kind of curious for those people who, like I mentioned the last time, I'm not a social creature by nature. So doing something like this to me, it's not scary, it's just challenging. But, you know, the first one I did, got it up on YouTube, and just to kind of see, partly because I couldn't really follow myself well enough to know how it sounded and how it looked and all that kind of stuff. So now I'm kind of, now that I know how that video turned out, and the mic, that was the other thing, I didn't know how much the mic picked up. It picked up quite a bit, which I was happy. Sort of. As I say, that last video, there were cars in the background, and I think this one at the beginning here, there were probably kids outside, you might have heard, before I started getting going with the chatty. But I was kind of curious too, like I've got, you know, kind of a quiet music going on in the background that I know is content that's available to use, but I haven't quite figured out how to get it. You know, a lot of folks have everything. I think most people do this through like their PCs or whatever, so they have, you know, multiple cameras and that kind of stuff, and I just don't want to be that bothered with it. So we'll have to just kind of figure out what to do about all that around the time if I really get serious with this. But for now, I just wanted to get on here again and try this again and see how it goes. And I think I got one more viewer than I did the other day, maybe, which is kind of nice, which is kind of cool. I'm happy about that. I'm not sure who watched me the other day, but I do know I have a couple of people that we follow, similar folks here on Twitch, in the cross-stitch community, and they decided to follow my Twitch page, so I'm happy about that. I hope one day we can work it out to where we can all meet up on here and get to chatting like a couple of longtime friends. But I know people's lives are busy, and I'm just trying to figure all this out and try this out and figure out what equipment works best, and volume and sound, and whether or not I can sit here and talk for an hour or not, which apparently I can. I was trying to look and see what time it is, because I know here it's mid-afternoon, so I was trying to give myself a little bit of time to make up for the beginnings today, because I sat there and fooled with that camera for I don't know how long, and then was pretty quiet until I saw people might be popping in. Not that I don't mind sitting here talking to myself, because it kind of worked out the last time too, but I never know when people come into a room, if they just come in just to check things out, or if they come in because they just need some background noise, or if they come in because they actually know me, which, hey, that's awesome too. I really don't My Instagram's the perfect example. I let people find me. I certainly go out and follow people. I mean, I want to curate my Instagram feed to the content that I want to see. But I don't have an Instagram account necessarily to gain followers, to have a big social network. I don't necessarily sell anything, at least not yet, and that kind of thing. So I'm not motivated by the either the social or the marketing or the networking aspect, outreach aspect of whether it's Instagram or Facebook or or Twitch or YouTube or whatever. So to go from an Instagram account, which I've got a healthy following, but I don't know how many of those accounts are actually people who are actually active on a regular basis and see my what I post on my stories. I know I have a small group of folks out there that we regularly respond, react, celebrate each other's updates, to whether it's cross stitch or knitting or whatever it might be. So I know there's that small group of us, but from a larger reach aspect, because I'm not trying to put myself out there for the purposes of gaining any kind of momentum from a social media aspect for, like I said, marketing purposes or something like that. I just kind of let my stuff happen organically. I mean, I follow or I watch or I pay attention because I know, like, Instagram's a perfect example, and Facebook too, to a certain degree. I mean, Facebook, well, they're both the same thing now, honestly. But Facebook, it happened first on Facebook, but then now Instagram, being owned by the same company, has a similar algorithm. And while I don't mind the algorithm, I find some disturbing things wrong with it. But that's more from an actual social and reach standpoint for the people who need the voice, and don't need the voice for that matter. But for people like me who just are putting it out there so friends and family can follow, so people can know what's going on in my life, I don't broadcast. This Twitch thing is brand new for me. I didn't tell anybody. I just put it out here just to kind of see if I liked it. Part of the reason why was because my YouTube account, I've got a few followers there, more than I ever expected. Again, meant to be very organic and just see what happens. People like and they subscribe, and that's great, but not meant to, say, hey, come watch me. I'm not that person at all. So I wanted to do the Twitch thing only because, not that YouTube Live is better or worse, but I wanted to try this platform as well, just to kind of see if there was anything different about it that I liked, or that, the fact that I could take what I did the other day working on my hat, and I could then upload it to my YouTube, and that just meant I had new content without having to create more content, which was great. Even though I think I got a subscription box in the mail today, so I may actually put an unboxing on YouTube tomorrow. That'll put some more content out there. But I'm just trying to figure all this out, figure out what I want to do with it. So again, just want to create some organic momentum. I don't want to tell the whole world I'm out here. Like I said, I've got one or two social media friends that follow me on here, which I think is absolutely great. And hopefully when there is time, when we get the time, hopefully have a crossing of paths on here, which would be awesome. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with this headband. I have so much, well, I think I have so much of this yarn left. I honestly maybe need to pull this out of this yarn sock and see really what I'm working with, but I really do think I have quite a bit. I mean, I say quite a bit. I think I have more than I realized. And I also decided to, or made up my mind, that I am going to just keep knitting this till I run out of yarn, because I do want to use up all this yarn. But if I end up making a band that is bigger than whatever this ended up being, 3 1/4 inches or whatever, if it ends up being, heck, double that, I may double it over and then whip stitch, or what do they call it when you bind off but you pick up, you know, the stitches, or crochet, you know, maybe I'll crochet the 2 ends together and be a nice thick headband. That would be awesome. Absolutely fantastic. I can't believe I've still got one other person watching me. That's like crazy. I don't know who it is. I know I'm watching me, but I don't know who else is watching me. And I have to apologize too. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can do something here really quick. I was wondering if did want to do that. But I noticed when I was looking at this, which is fine, let me see if I can do this. I was trying to figure out if and I don't know how to do it, but I noticed when I was watching myself, which is kind of weird to say, but when I was watching this, like, because I wanted to see what it looked like to a person that was not signed in or didn't have a Twitch account, and I noticed it said I want to say chat available for followers only, but that's because I hadn't logged in. But I didn't know if you do have a Twitch account and you are on here not anonymously, if you can post in the chat. And I'm not saying that anybody needs to, but I was kind of curious whether or not that was a setting that I had to enable or disable, or if it was because I am so new to this that the system, or, you know, the newish account meant that, you know, there were certain settings that I couldn't alter or mess with until I had been on here a few more times. But I kind of feel like I hope that it's open to everybody. But that's okay. Sorry for the interruption on my knitting, if that's what you were here for. And for those who watch this, I took, gosh, it's been a while now. I haven't been knitting my whole life, okay? And this is not, I'm pretty much self-taught. The first class I ever took was a class at a craft, it's a non-profit craft store in Denton, which at the time was called Scrap Denton. They had just a basics, and it was a hat knitting, just learn how to knit a hat. And when I went to that class, for whatever reason, I thought I understood about the mechanics of a knit and a purl, either I had it backwards in my head, or I had it a little bit, the directions, of the needles and stuff like that, a little confused or something. But somehow I was knitting in a way that I think I was twisting my stitches during the class. So what the instructor ended up doing was starting like ribbing like this for me, and then letting me take over, and then that way I didn't have to worry about the whole learning a cast on, first of all, but that way I could watch her knit and then see the directions in which the needle should move and that kind of thing, and then got it. So I went home, and basically that class was, I think I had bought my own yarn, bought my own knitting needle. I mean, like they told you, suggested what you should bring. So I brought everything myself, but then just paid just the basic class fee. So then I was like, okay, well then I found out about a community here in the area that's meant for like everybody kind of in this part of, North Texas or North Central Texas, depending on how you think of things. And it's a, again, kind of a nonprofit. It's a commercial warehouse space that makers of, and I mean of all types, glass blowers, woodworkers, knitters, crocheters, weavers, metal artists, programmer, software, computer programmers. I mean, all kinds of people. So basically, it's just a big open commercial space that they rent out to these individual, and you can become like a what do they call it? I can't even think of what it's called right now. A member, essentially, and pay like a fee, which allows you access to that space for your own artistic endeavors. So, like, for instance, if you really want to become a woodworker, but you don't have the, the capital or the cash to just, buy all the tools and or even like if you live in an apartment where you don't have a garage that you can put all those tools in, this affords you the luxury of basically paying a monthly fee, being a member, but then you get use of all of the tools that they have in the shop portion of that makerspace. So after I took my hat knitting class, that was the next thing I did. Was I went, one of the girls in the kind of I think they call themselves the fiber artists section, because it's not just knitters and crocheters, even it's the weavers, the spinners, the I'm trying to think, there's a bunch of different fiber arts, creative arts people in that same department, but essentially anything fiber related. I think even embroidery, cross stitch, those kinds of things are part of their group too. But there was a girl who, same thing, was offering a knitting class, but this time it was a basics knitting class on how to design and knit like either 3 or 5 different kinds of shawls. But the idea being that as long as you know the basic concepts of knitting, the knitting and the purling, then she can show you, based on different shawl shapes, an asymmetrical, a crescent shape, a you know, I can't think of the other ones right now. But anyway, she would show you the mechanics, the basics engineering of creating any shawl you want, just by using whatever yarn you want, and then just simple basic techniques of increasing and decreasing stitches and rows and those kinds of things to create different kinds of shapes. So that class was much more interesting to me or much more beneficial to me, because one thing, it was a much larger group of people, and the hat class to me, I'm forever grateful, because that was a small class. It was the teacher, myself, and I want to say one other student, maybe 2 other students, but it was really small. So she was able to really spend some time with us, learning how to knit a hat. And we weren't there forever. We were basically there to do maybe about this much and then take it home and learn to do the rest on our own. The shawl class was unique and so beneficial in the respect that pretty much everybody in that class was either a member or a regular attendee of other classes there. So some of the people were regular members, and so they were just there because it was Tuesday or Thursday or whatever night it was, meeting night. So they were just there to be there. The girl that was teaching the class, I think there was maybe myself and 1 or 2 other people that was very new to knitting, but everybody else was there because they just either had never, they always knitted socks or hats or sweaters or something, and maybe the learning to knit your own shawl thing was new to them even, or they were just there just to hang out because that was their group of people. And so it was great because there's a large group of people there and everybody was learning at a different level. And I got to meet some really interesting people. Come to find out, the girl teaching the class, which I don't even know if she's still, I don't think she is. I haven't seen her in such a long time, but for the longest time after that class, I always ran into her because she worked at the Starbucks here in town. And at some point, and I'm going to say this is like 10 years ago too. So, I mean, it's been a long time, but there are 2 main Starbucks in our town, and it's kind of ridiculous because they're truly like, they're on opposite corners, but they're also on opposite sides of a major freeway or a tollway. So I think they're both still there and very active because they get different traffic from different directions, as far as their people that come. So anyway, so for the longest time, she worked at one of them that I always went to and still frequent most. But then I stopped seeing her for a while, and I thought, well, that's weird. I was like, I hope she's doing well. I hope she got a good job, found her another job. Come to find out, she was working at the other one on the opposite side of the tollway. So, which was just fine, but I hardly ever visit that one. And it just so happened I happened to be there that one morning that she was working, so we kind of caught up a little bit. But since like COVID and those kinds of things, I don't know. And that last time I did run into her, she mentioned how so her then at the time boyfriend was also a member of the makerspace, and I think in the fiber arts department, but I think he also participated in one of the other areas too, maybe the woodworking or like they've got vinyl cutters, they got all kinds of stuff there. But anyway, but he was a member of the fiber group, and she kind of mentioned how because they broke up, and she moved in with one of the other girls in the group. I mean, they were roommate, became roommates. She moved out of the apartment that she was sharing with her then boyfriend, then became ex-boyfriend. Jeez. But she mentioned how, because their circle of friends all revolved around knit night up there, that she kind of stopped going because, you know, she was just going to keep running into him, and it was just awkward and whatever. So, and like I said, that conversation, I want to say, it's been at least 5-6 years ago. I mean, definitely pre-COVID. And so I have not seen her since then. So like I said, I hope she's doing well. I hope she's okay, and maybe she found a new partner, and maybe, you know, maybe she's even, you know, on to bigger and better things. So I hope everything's going well for her. But I absolutely love that class of hers. I've still got somewhere over here, and I've got a pile of like patterns, you know, just single sheet patterns and stuff over here. I know I've still got that shawl information, because it was really, really good information. And essentially it boils down to this: if you are familiar enough with knitting, and particularly knitting shawls, to know how basic shawl construction works, the idea is she wanted you to understand how to increase a row, or increase your stitches and decrease your stitches to create shape. Whether, like I said, it's an asymmetrical, it's a crescent shape, it's just a triangle shawl, you know, whatever it is, so that you had the opportunity, or you had the ability to create any shawl in any shape you wanted. It could even be very, you know, eccentric, eclectic, freeform, you know, so to speak, shawl, because you could increase and decrease rows all you chose. And the other interesting, really kind of interesting thing is I think somewhere I have a bag, project bag, with the shawl that I started still in it, and the yarn that's in it. I remember it was super, super soft, and I think it was actually like over in like the baby section, but it was really pretty, really sweet, pretty, like an off-white cream color with like, you know, just the hint of like pastel speckles in it. And it would, at the time, all I was ever buying was box store yarn. So I got it from Joann's or Michael's or somewhere. And I'm pretty sure I probably just, you know, picked it up off the shelf and realized how soft it was and thought it was totally worth it. But saying all that to say, I think I was telling you all of this to say, if you are watching me knit and you realize, gosh, she knits weird, or gosh, she's really slow, or she, you know, has really weird technique, it's because in learning to knit, I self-taught, you know, knitting through watching like YouTube videos and through a couple of classes. Those classes did not teach me the proper way to knit. I think, just like cross stitch, a lot of knitters would tell you there are proper ways to knit. I mean, there are some probably knitters out there that would tell you, no, you have to knit this. I mean, you know, in order to get a knit that you like. But to me, personally, I believe that if you are creating a fabric that, you know, is a knitted fabric, it doesn't matter how you achieve this, as long as you're achieving it. All that to say that when I realized at some point I think in knitting a hat pattern, as a matter of fact, my method for knitting was not conventional. What I'm knitting now, you know, the way in which I'm knitting now, it is a little more conventional. But first of all, I hold the yarn with my left hand and I knit with my right. You know, I'm a right-handed knitter. The girl that taught the shawl class, when she saw me knitting in that class, asked me if I was a crocheter, or if I crocheted, and I said yes. And she goes, did you crochet before you knit? And I said yes. And I think that's what tipped her off to that, was the fact that when you crochet, typically, if you're a right-handed crocheter, you hold the yarn with the non-dominant hand. So I think her watching me hold the yarn, in the way I was holding it, I think she recognized that in me. So that's part of it. The other part of it is, so when I first taught myself to knit, in order to achieve the knit fabric that I did for quite a few projects, I only knit through the back loop. And I did not realize, because I was still achieving the same knitted fabric, I did not realize my error until, like I said, I had purchased and started knitting a hat pattern where part of one of the stitches said, which in knitting there's a lot of shorthand, but it said TTBL, which means through the back loop. And I was like, wait a minute. So I went back out on YouTube and started watching, because the stitches that they were asking me to do, I was kind of already doing because I was knitting through the back loop always. And I didn't know my error because my fabric was still turning out the same. So at that point, I kind of made a conscious decision that I didn't necessarily need to change my knitting stitches, the way I knit. I didn't need to change the mechanics of it if I was okay with it. But I felt like, if there were going to be times like that where the stitches in a chart or in a pattern were actually meant to be different for a reason, which meant I needed to learn to knit through the, correct, I'm going to say correctly, but, knit conventionally through the front loop, through the front of the loop, like I am, or continuing to knit through the back of the loop. There may be pattern nuances and patterns that may not be achieved or may not look the same, because of my method of knitting. So at some point I decided, and I can't remember what, maybe it may have been a pair of socks, because I knew I'd just be knitting in the round, or a hat or something, because at least a hat, you can pick up bulkier, thicker yarn and kind of see what you're doing a little bit better. But eventually that's what I ended up doing. And I mean, it was slow going. It wasn't like starting knitting, learning to knit all over again, but it took me a while. But I'm still not quite to the pace. Like, I can knit really fast if I knit through the back loop. And I don't, for a lot of patterns, like I said, you wouldn't know the difference at all. But at some point I realized, okay, I need to learn, or I need to decide whether or not, I want to, I realized if I can learn to knit the conventional way, the way knitting was intended, then that might open up a lot more pattern stitches, different kinds of stitches, learning them for me. So that's what I opted to do. So yeah, I'm still kind of, I still think there might be something about either the method in which I'm wrapping the yarn. Again, as far as I can tell, it's not making that much of a difference, or you can't tell. Like for instance, I bring the yarn over the needle as opposed to, and then, when I purl, I bring it under. I don't know if that makes a difference or not. I mean, I know it makes a difference, but I don't know in what way it makes a difference. But I still am enjoying knitting. And again, I think just kind of like cross stitch, there's not a wrong way to knit, unless what, the ultimate goal is you're not achieving the look that you had intended. So I've definitely got a lot to learn. I will say though, having now kind of re-taught myself to knit, there have been patterns that I know, because I knit through the back loop for the longest time, there are patterns that, not complicated, but that probably look or would look very different if I went back and knit them correctly. Will I? Probably not. I don't, whatever I knit that might not have looked exactly the way the designer intended. I still think to a certain degree, what I achieved, whether it's a scarf pattern or a hat or a shawl or whatever it is, I'm sure, I'm the only one that might know that I knit that wrong. Anybody else looking at it just sees a knitted object that, hey, she made it herself. That's great. So, and I apologize for whoever that was out there. Just like the last video, I mentioned we have people in our neighborhood that like to drive through here on motorcycles and small little sports coupe vehicles that, think that they can drive 20 miles above the posted speed limit because, why not? And it's just kind of dangerous. We've got kids that play out in the neighborhood. We've got, I know there's several people that have pets, that stay outdoors for the most part around here. It's just really, really dangerous, and nothing can be done about it. And that's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but I have to tell myself it's out of my control. And that's all right. Well, we're at 1:38, and I've still been, I assume, maybe with the same one viewer again, which is pretty crazy, pretty neat, pretty awesome. I don't mind the one viewer that, as far as I know, has not had anything to say on the chat. So just keep knitting away on this. I can't remember. I know I clocked with the hat. I think when I was just stockinette stitch, the actual hat, not the ribbing like this, I think one row just all the way around with no, changes, decreases or whatever. I think one row all the way around took like 6 minutes. I think with the ribbing it takes closer to like 10, and that's just because it takes a little bit longer. Or you have to slow down a little bit more because you have to process, the alternate stitches, the alternate movement with your hands, that kind of thing. And this circular needle is just big enough. I had debated whether or not, in starting this stream today, whether or not I would just start with my cast on, but I realized I knew the first few rows were always kind of tricky because you had these huge stretched out stitches because you're trying to get in the first few rounds and get the yarn even and not to twist your cast on and that kind of thing. So I opted instead to wait till I was a few rows in, and that way it looked a little pretty, a little nicer also. Looked like I knew what I was doing by then. And then I kind of mentioned, I think at the top of this stream, that my cast on yarn was about 51 inches, and all I've got left, or all I had left after the cast on, was this little bit of a tail. So my plan is to knit this until I think I only need about that much to cast off, but I need to look and see because I know the cast off I want to use, and I know there's a formula, and I can't remember. I almost think it's like 3 times the the length that you're needing to cast off, which in this case, if I remember correctly, I'm kind of curious. I haven't even looked to see if this ended up being about the same size. Actually, it's bigger, and I don't know why. Maybe over time the hat pulled it in or something, but this is, oh, maybe it is about the same. No, this definitely pulled in a bit, but that may just be because it's now finished. So this is 8 times 2 is 16 inches. So if the bind off math is correct, the binding off that I'm thinking of, then yes, 48 inches is what I'd need to cast off, but the 51 inches would definitely give me enough leeway but I need to find that cast off method. And I know when I first wanted to ensure I knew what I was doing, I went out on YouTube and watched a tutorial, watched somebody else do it, because to me, visually seeing it is so much better. And I'm sure if there are any knitters out there watching this, everybody kind of probably has their favorite go-to like tutorials on YouTube that they like to watch. But I'll tell you what, Very Pink Knits, I gotta hand it to her, because she not only does she she has every tutorial of every kind of stitch you can think of out there, which is amazing, but she's been here lately going back, and I say lately, like more recently, been going back and redoing her stitch tutorials, especially for like cast on and cast off tutorials, and doing like slow motion versions of them, and they are just absolutely amazing. And she obviously realizes how beneficial, maybe would be the word, how educational that is. And I'm thinking she's probably the one. There is a bind off that I know is called the something, fill in the blank, super stretchy bind off, and I think that's the one I gotta find. And it's the one that, like I said, I think I used for the cuff of a sock when I was doing, it may be these current socks I'm avoiding, the one that the foot's too big. That may be the one that I did the super stretchy bind off on. And which means it may also be in that Socktacular book that I am knitting from. And I'm sorry, I'm not really apologizing, but if that stitch marker banging on the table bothers you, I hope you've adjusted your volume accordingly. I'm trying not to, but somehow it gets to a certain part in this headband, I think, where until it kind of gets around to the left side over here, like in the 7 or 8 o'clock position where that hat is. It's bouncing on that table, and it's kind of annoying because it even kind of, I'm not super sensitive to noises, but except for when my anxiety's up. Or when I'm already trying to, like, I don't know quite how to explain it. The best way I can explain it is usually like during the work day, if I'm trying to concentrate on something, I might still have like the TV going in the background, but I know it's okay. Like I'm not paying attention to it. It's just there for background noise because the complete silence sometimes just gives me. I mean, it makes my ears ring. But you know, it's a work day. I'm trying to concentrate on something. TV's going in the background, which is fine. But then you add like, let's say the phone rings that not, you know, like business call related, but like the house, you know, I'm working from home and the house phone rings. And then all of a sudden the cat comes up and starts complaining, you know, like he wants something, he wants food or he wants, you know, clean water or something like that. And all of those things combined will just set me off. And then something tiny like that, or it'll get me going. And then something tiny like that stitch marker, you know, just quietly clacking on the table will just drive me crazy to no end. And I know these other stitch markers are kind of doing it too, and I really don't need them anymore. They were meant to just be there to mark about every 20 stitches or so in the beginning, until I got enough of this pattern knit that I could see the pattern. I really need to take them off, so maybe this round I'll take them off too, because I really don't. They're not in the way, they're just not necessary anymore because I'm not following a pattern. I mean, I'm not following a pattern where I still need to know my number of stitches, and I'm not doing anything where I need to keep track. I mean, I'm just knitting till I run out of yarn, and I'm doing something, knitting on something that's repetitive and a very basic pattern. My little macaron stitch marker thing. I don't know where I got that from. I got it so long ago. I think I got it like in an old Yarn Crush box or a Knit Crate box or something. But I absolutely love it because it is just the perfect size for holding little stitch markers. These little light bulb stitch markers that are really nice. And then of course, again, like the other day, I've got my little Charmed and Dangerous, my little mocha coffee cup. And that will stay just because that's marking the beginning of the round. Not that that really matters, but it'd be nice to have an even number of rows all the way around when I'm doing this, or when I get ready to cast off. I don't think it would be that noticeable if I ended up casting off, you know, and had 10 extra stitches on a row or something, but if it stayed even, that would be super helpful. Kind of been ignoring my Earl Grey tea over here, and it's pretty much cold, or room temperature. I mean, cold to, you know, cold to the taste. Which, it's okay, it's fine. I just realized I've been talking for, geez, almost 2 hours now. This is an hour 50. So my voice, I think, is starting to get a little gravelly, a little scratchy. I wonder if this is a good outdoorsy weekend for everyone else like it is here. Weather is pleasantly nice. It's one of those winter days in Texas where it's cold. That's okay. But there's not a lot of wind, which is great. Certain parts of Texas, that's all there is wind, and it's awful. It's absolutely awful. The wind just never freaking stops. Um, but it's cool. I mean, it's, the temperature outside is, I don't know, I haven't looked here lately, but, you know, started out this morning, it was definitely below freezing. I mean, but like right at, like 31, 32, 30, somewhere in there. But got up, went and did a little bit of grocery shopping, right when the store opened, because that's how I like to do it. And then the sun was up right as I was getting up, which, hallelujah for, the shortest days of the year being over with. I mean, we're getting more and more sunshine, so that's great. But the sun was out, so immediately when the sun comes out, even though it's, 30 or by that point, once the sun starts coming up, it's like 36. It's comfortable. It is so nice. And it's the kind of comfortable where you really can, because the sun's out and you're in your car, crack the windows, or like in my case, I've got sunroof, moonroof combo. So, just crack that open a little bit. So the car doesn't get really hot from the sun, from the greenhouse effect to the windows and the sun, but it lets in a little bit of cool air, but it's fresh air, and it was just so nice this morning. So that was absolutely great. And I think the temperature itself is probably, if I had to guess, going to get up in the 50s, 60s. And that's just kind of perfect weather. I mean, it's the kind of weather where you can go outside and it should be kind of cold, but you can go outside in t-shirt and jeans and be totally comfortable in the sun. Now, the minute you're out of the sun, you're in the shade, watch out, because it's going to get cold. But yeah, for just being a nice February day, it was absolutely great. Okay, and now I'm starting to not pay attention to what I'm doing. Say, trying to fix the loop on that stitch kind of messed me up a little bit. I think messed up my knitting repetition. Might get going. Yeah, so as I say, the other night I was on here for an hour, and now I'm on here for almost 2. Need to take a break. It's about 4:15 here. Did not have lunch, so I'm getting kind of hungry. Need to think about some kind of dinner plans. And then I'd like to get this finished. This should be finished today. I mean, this should be a, one-day project kind of thing. I just need to concentrate just like I am. It might be that I get this back out if I end up watching some other folks either here on Twitch or on YouTube tomorrow, and if I don't get this done tonight. There's a lot of TV watching I'd like to do too. I think I still have one more episode of The Witcher left to watch. I think I mentioned last time I started Boba Fett, but the Book of Boba Fett on Disney Plus, but I was not paying attention to the first episode, so I think I need to go back and rewatch it, just so I know what's going on. And then there's probably some new episodes on HBO. I don't think I watched, I think The Gilded Age comes on every Monday night, so I don't think I watched this past Monday, so it's probably out there. I need to look out there and see. I think I mentioned last time that new pirate show that's going to be on HBO Max. I have not, keep seeing the trailers for it, but I have not seen like a release date, so I don't know if it's already out or if it's going to, it's still, they're just, letting everybody know, hey, this is coming out soon, that kind of thing. And then seems like there are a couple other things I've been wanting to watch also. I know there's some stuff on Apple TV Plus that's new. And then there are a couple of things like, so we started watching Yellowstone, and keep in mind we're way behind on Yellowstone. Like I think we just finished the first season, so we just kind of got on that show, much later than others. And it's okay. I mean, it's a good show. I won't disparage it or anything. Just it's the kind of show where my husband and I both sit there and kind of watch the male and female characters and just kind of scratch our heads like, why are these people like this? But like I said, it's fine. But the 1883 series, which is like the prequel, came out just, very recently. And so I thought, that's more my speed. I like dramas set during certain time periods. I love Westerns in general, whether they be traditional or non. Like Westworld, I love Westworld. But 1883 was definitely more my speed. Unless there was definitely drama, but the drama seems to be more, where I guess the drama that unfolds in Yellowstone is a reflection of the current modern era and of the type of people, whatever, that are portrayed in it. 1883, that drama also reflects the people and the time period, and I can appreciate that kind of a dramatic series more. So I watched the first episode. I really liked it. We're huge fans of Sam Elliott. And I was kind of curious about Tim McGraw and Faith Hill being in it. And I told my husband, I said, Tim McGraw's not a bad actor. I give him credit. But Faith Hill, and I only watched the first episode, so maybe things kind of, her character develops a little bit more, but I kind of felt like she was lacking something in her acting ability. Not that she can't act, but just that her acting seemed, I don't know if you want to use the word forced or not, not as, sorry, I think I bumped you guys. Not as complex of a character in acting, that I guess I was kind of expecting especially for the, it being a Taylor Sheridan show, and the script and the cast and whatever. But like I said, I don't think she's a bad actress. I just think, like I said, I've only watched one episode. I probably need to give her a little bit more time and space to get into that role. But other than that, it was very, very interesting, very good. Also very interesting from a location standpoint, just in that most or a lot of that first episode, once they all get to town on the train, I think the town is supposed to be Fort Worth, Texas. So that was all very interesting. And come to find out, I was doing a little bit of digging, because I'm always curious when people pick. I mean, Fort Worth is not a small town, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not Dallas. It's not like writing the show Dallas from the 70s and 80s, if you guys are old enough to remember that. But to pick a big yet kind of small town, I mean a big town that has a small town feel like Fort Worth, I was kind of curious as to the background of Taylor Sheridan, and sure enough, I guess he's from right around here somewhere. I can't remember all the details now when I looked it up, but I think he went to high school here, and he and his wife now own property, somewhere around here, pretty close. So, yeah, so he's kind of a, if not a Texas native, born and raised, then definitely a Texas resident for a long period of his life. So that's always kind of interesting when people go out of their way. Kind of very similarly to people, I think, that probably read Stephen King, or read Stephen King books or watch movies. Realize all of those are centered around towns in Maine, and Maine is certainly such a small state that to be mentioned in a book, you should know that state like the back of your hand. So anyway. Oh, but other than that, I don't know. I know there are new things I want to watch. And I know there are new things that I've been watching, but I cannot for the life of me think of any of them. That American Auto show that's on NBC is really funny. We've been watching that. I've been meaning to give that Abbott Elementary a try. People have been saying good things about it. So I have to sit down and watch a few episodes of that. It's kind of funny too with shows like that whether they're 30-minute shows with commercials or they're hour-long shows with commercials. It's kind of funny how is it we've come to the point where we have to sit down and make time for TV of all things. I mean, that used to be the thing we always did at the end of the day, was sit down and watch TV, and it's like none of us do that anymore. It's like to watch, perfect example, to watch a 2.5 hour movie in our house probably takes closer to 3 because of all the interruptions and breaks and whatever. I mean, it's almost like if you want to see a movie, you ought to, you don't have to do anything. But I should say, if it was me and I wanted my undivided attention devoted to a movie, should just force myself to go to the theater to watch it, because otherwise I'll never, I won't remember half of it because I'm distracted by my phone or my iPad or, whatever, or, the cats, you're sitting in the living room watching TV and the cat jumps up in your lap and is yelling in your face because he wants food, or, something's happened, or, all those kinds of distractions. The phone rings, you got to put it on pause because, your mom calls, or, all of those things. So it's just kind of crazy how even 10 years ago, you sat down every night, you came home from work, came home, sat down, had dinner, and then watched TV for a couple hours before you went to bed, or in bed, or however you did it. But now it's like we just have so many other things we do besides TV. Can't imagine what, well, even our parents, they remember a time when TV was it, man. To have a TV was something amazing in and of itself, and kind of a treat. It was a special occasion to watch TV. But now we'd all say, well, who's got time for TV? It's just silly to even think about, or to even say that out loud, honestly. It is just about 4:30. I'm going to finish this round and get in a couple more stitches because I need to get past just my stitch marker so it doesn't fall off. Put that away. Sorry, that's kind of squeaky and noisy and rattly. But I appreciate y'all. For those of you who came and went and stuck around and all that good stuff. I guess the next phase is to get to the affiliate level, which This Twitch thing seems to work out okay for me. And the fact that I can post it to YouTube is kind of nice. I need to figure out, though, I think there's a way I can edit this before I send it over to YouTube, because the first probably, if I had to guess, 10 minutes of this was not good. It was me fooling around with the camera. It was a nightmare. Absolute nightmare. And there was nothing to watch, nothing to hear. It's basically just watching close-ups of my hand while I tried to position this camera in a way to where I could film overhead and not get a good angle and still be able to see my knitting. And this really did work out so much better. It's not perfect, I mean, as far as the way I've got this set up, but it'll do. It'll do for now. So I'm good. I'm good there. So that is it for me, y'all. Again, I really appreciate it. Appreciate y'all watching. Like I said, I'm hoping to be done. I've still got quite a bit of yarn left, surprisingly. So this may end up being a double brimmed, or double, do it once and then do it again and then crochet it. But hopefully next time I see you guys, maybe I'll have this done so I can show this off to you. Maybe I'll have a couple of project bags if you guys want to see that. Maybe I'll rig all this up to where I can do some cross stitching. I'll have to see how to do that. That'll be my next trick, because the clamp that I use, so that was the other thing I talked about last time. The clamp that I use, I was going to find a clamp for my camera, for the phone, my phone, the camera on my phone, to hold it up. Well, I realized one of the lights I have has a clamp on it. So that's what I did, was I put the phone on a little, kind of like handheld tripod thing, and then clamped it to that. Well, that's also the clamp I use if I'm working, with cross stitch. So, I do have a couple of like Q-snap style stands and and another bigger floor, stand. It's an inexpensive model, but maybe I can somehow rig all this up to where I can be straight over my stitching. The only thing about that floor stand is there's only one or two projects that I really stitch on that, which is larger scroll frame projects, and I'm not, neither one of them appeal to me, but I might be able to clip a Q-snap or something on there instead, maybe, and do it that way. That might work. So I appreciate all y'all. And if this ends up on YouTube, I appreciate anybody who goes back to watch it just for watching its sake. And I hope you guys all have a nice weekend. It is now officially, second half of February, so, where does the time go these days, right? But I hope you guys all take care, and I will see you probably in a few days, maybe one day during the week, this next week, if I, had a good day or a short day, or even a bad day at work. Maybe I'll hop on here and I will catch up with all you guys then. So I'll talk to you later. Bye for now.